Picture a room in Devon, 1686. It's small, damp, the air thick with the smell of tallow and something else. Something sharp like burnt ozone. The door is barred shut from the inside. A young woman, Elspeth Mullin, is dead on her cot when the local coroner, a man of God and medicine named John Fowles, finally forces his way in. He expects to find evidence of a struggle, a self-inflicted wound, anything to explain the scene, but he finds nothing. There are no marks on her body, no signs of violence. There is only the impossible. Every single hair on her head, on her arms, every lash on her eyelids has turned a brilliant, shocking white. The constable with him complains of the heat, a stifling, oppressive warmth that makes sweat bead on his brow. But when Master Fowles checks the hearth, it is cold. Not just unused, it's swept clean. The official record will never mention these details. But there was one thing so unbelievable, so terrifying, that the coroner had to sketch it in his private notes. A piece of evidence that defies all logic. Upon the interior of the room's single window, etched into the surface of the glass as if by a powerful acid, was a handprint. It was delicate, slender, and it had 6 fingers. Official history buries its mistakes, and it buries its monsters. We are starting our investigation here with an impossible end. Because to understand the truth, we have to uncover a beginning that has been deliberately and violently erased. And now, please stop the video and subscribe to our channel. To be able to keep making videos like this, we need to reach 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Thank you. That 6-fingered handprint, the snow-white hair, the impossible, oppressive heat, none of it appears in the official record. What does? The Bideford Parish Inquest of 1686 concludes its investigation into the death of Elspeth Mullin with 2 simple, dismissive words: frightful melancholy. It's a neat, tidy explanation. A young woman, overcome with sadness, simply willed her own heart to stop. It's clean. It requires no further questions, and it is a complete and utter fabrication, because we have the coroner's private notes. And in those notes, he documented the testimony of Elspeth's neighbor, a blacksmith, a man of practicality, whose world was defined by fire, iron, and sweat, not flights of fancy. And what he described hearing that night was anything but melancholy. He told the coroner it began with a low hum, a vibration so deep it wasn't just heard, it was felt in the teeth, in the bones of your jaw. Then came a sound he could only describe as a sharp crack, like a great river freezing over in a single, violent instant. And finally, the whispers. He said they came from Elspeth's room, but it wasn't her voice. It was a chorus of hushed tones, speaking a language that wasn't human, a horrifying cascade of clicks and sharp sibilants. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: why would a coroner ignore such a specific, terrifying testimony from a credible witness? What was so deeply disturbing about what that blacksmith heard that the official record had to lie? This wasn't just a cover-up, it was the start of a pattern, an ancient conspiracy of silence to bury a truth far more terrifying than the death of one young woman. The lie in Bideford wasn't an isolated incident. It was an echo, because this wasn't the first time the truth was buried, and it wouldn't be the last. To find the origin of this suppression, we have to travel backwards in time. More than 1,000 years before Elspeth Mullin's death, to the ancient library of St. Catherine's Monastery at the foot of Mount Sinai. In 1994, scientists examining a 12th century prayer book subjected it to a new technology, multispectral imaging, and beneath the pious prayers, a ghost appeared. They had found a palimpsest, a manuscript where the original text was painstakingly scraped away with milk and oat bran, so the expensive vellum could be reused. A story was murdered to make way for another. But technology has now given a voice back to that ghost. The hidden text, dated to 400 CE, is not a prayer. It's a frantic, desperate testimony. You can almost feel the terror of the scribe who wrote it, his hand trembling as he dipped his quill, knowing that to possess this knowledge let alone write it down, was a death sentence. He was recording a forbidden oral history, an expunged Genesis that spoke of a time before Adam and Eve. It spoke of a first Eve. This wasn't just a forgotten story, it was an actively erased one. What could be so dangerous, so heretical, that it had to be scrubbed from the page, silenced, and buried under a layer of prayers for 1600 years? The answer would begin to unravel a history far darker than anyone could have imagined. The scribe's terror was justified. Because the forbidden history he was recording wasn't just a story, it was a crime. The palimpsest describes in cold clinical detail the official punishment for anyone caught speaking the name of this first Eve, the one they called Lilith. It wasn't just excommunication, it was mutilation. The tongue was to be removed, ensuring the speaker's silence was permanent. And then they were marked for life, branded on the soft flesh of the inner wrist with a hot iron, leaving a permanent sigil of their transgression. The text is chillingly specific about its dimensions. The mark was to be exactly 1 thumb width high and 1/2 thumb width across. For centuries, this was just a disturbing detail in a long-buried text. A threat, but not necessarily a reality, until you cross-reference it with another set of historical records. For decades, archaeologists excavating Coptic burial sites from the same period had noted strange, recurring marks on the wrists of dozens of exhumed mummies. They were dismissed, logged in academic journals as decorative tattoos, perhaps a tribal marking or a slave brand. But when the Sinai palimpsest was decoded in 1994, those old archaeological records took on a terrifying new significance. The tattoos matched the punishment brand perfectly. The size, the shape, the location. This was never just about erasing a myth from a book. This was physical evidence of a systematic hunt, a persecution of real people who carried a forbidden knowledge. The marks are the proof. The pattern is real, documented on the flesh of the dead, which leaves us with a far more disturbing question. Who were these people, and what was the truth they died to protect? Those branded wrists prove the persecution was real. But the fear behind it is far older than the Coptic Church, older than the Roman Empire, older than the Bible itself. The pattern of suppression is older than any book. It's written in stone. We travel now to the cradle of civilization, ancient Sumeria, 3500 BCE. In 1978, amidst the ruins of Eridu, archaeologists unearthed a small cylinder seal, no bigger than your thumb. The official 1979 excavation log is dry, academic, and dismissive. It catalogs the object as VA 243 and describes its carving as a standard garden motif, just another of thousands of similar creation myths. It was filed away, forgotten, another piece in a dusty museum drawer. But one of the lead archaeologists, a doctor, Eris Thorne, saw something everyone else missed. And thank God he wrote it down in his private field diary. That diary, hidden for 40 years, tells a different story. Thorne, a master of archaic cuneiform, claims the official translation is a deliberate fraud. The inscription doesn't speak of a man and a woman made from his rib. It speaks of 2 equals, described with the Sumerian phrase Tiamat Din Gir, which translates not to woman, but to twin flame or equal spirit, and it gives her a name, Liltu. Thorne's diary reveals that the seal doesn't depict a peaceful creation. It depicts a violent separation. Her departure, it says, was not a quiet exit. It was announced by a sky-rending shriek that shattered obsidian from 3 paces. The oldest story we have isn't about the dawn of humanity. It's about a cataclysmic breakup, a sonic event so powerful it could turn rock into dust. A shriek that could shatter stone isn't mythology, it's physics. It's evidence of a phenomenal energy release. But the most incredible proof of what happened in that garden 5,500 years ago isn't in the sound the seal describes. It's in the stone itself. After the seal was quietly deaccessioned from the British Museum in 1998, it fell into the hands of a private collector, who allowed for testing the original excavators could only dream of. In 1999, a Swiss lab performed a deep material analysis using Raman spectroscopy. Their goal was simple: to trace the lapis lazuli to its source mine in ancient Afghanistan. Every mine on Earth has a unique geological fingerprint, a specific mix of trace minerals, but the lab report came back with a stunning conclusion. The fingerprint on the Eridu seal did not match any known mine on the planet. The trace elements fused into the crystal lattice of the stone had a signature that matched only one other known source: Howardite group meteoritic debris. The stone didn't come from a mountain, it came from the sky. The very material used to record the oldest story of humanity is not of this earth. The ancient texts, the ones that were suppressed and scraped from history, consistently describe a being made not just of dust, but of fire and clay. You have to ask the question, what if the oldest physical evidence we have suggests that the fire came from the stars? You've seen the history of the cover-up. The branded wrists, the rewritten translations, the extraterrestrial stone. Now, it's time to see what they were so desperate to hide. We return to that terrified scribe in his monastery cell, writing down the forbidden oral history from 400 CE. He's trying to describe the indescribable, the physical presence of the one they called Lilith. Her voice, he writes, was not of breath, but of resonance, like a great bell struck in an empty canyon, a sound that vibrated in your bones. The air around her didn't carry the scent of a human, but the sharp, sterile smell of ozone and scorched salt. The exact smell of a lightning strike hitting the open sea. But the most terrifying detail, the one that defies all known laws of biology, was in how she moved. The scribe testifies that she did not walk on the sand. She caused it to glass beneath her feet, leaving glistening trails of crude, black mirror in the dawn light. For centuries, a description this fantastic would have been dismissed as pure myth. But remember the forensic analysis of the scribe's iron gall ink? In 2001, Dr. Elena Voshina's report confirmed the ink was mixed with a high concentration of fulgurite particles. Fulgurite is the scientific name for sand that has been fused into glass by the intense heat of a lightning strike. The conclusion is inescapable and horrifying. The scribe wasn't just writing down a story he'd heard. He was gathering the physical proof left in her wake, the lightning-fused sand, and mixing it into his ink. He was using the very evidence of her impossible power to record his testimony: the glass footprints, the extraterrestrial stone, the six-fingered handprint. Viewed in isolation, they are impossible anomalies, historical oddities to be filed away and ignored. But when you place them side by side, the anomalies disappear. They become a pattern, a terrifying, repeating signature of a power that has erupted throughout human history. Think about the sound. The 3500 BCE Eridu seal describes a sky-rending shriek powerful enough to shatter obsidian. Now, jump forward 5,000 years to a small village in England. The blacksmith outside Elspeth Mullin's room in 1686 hears a sharp crack like a winter river freezing in an instant. They are describing the exact same acoustic event, a sonic boom, the signature of a sudden, massive energy displacement. Now, think about the heat. The 400 CE Sinai palimpsest describes the aftermath of her presence. The smell of ozone and scorched salt, and sand flash fused into glass by immense temperatures. Jump forward again, another one, 300 years. The coroner in Elspeth's room finds it unbearably warm, the palpable thermal residue of a great fire that was never lit. These aren't just similar stories. They are identical forensic footprints, documented by unconnected cultures, separated by millennia. A sonic shockwave and a blast of intense heat, a pattern of documentation that official histories have ignored, omitted, and suppressed. The signature is undeniable. The echo is perfect. This power has surfaced again and again, which leads to the most terrifying question of all. Where is it now? The pattern is real. The power is real. But a power that leaves a physical signature might also leave a biological one. Let's go back to where we started. The six-fingered handprint etched on the glass. For centuries, we've been taught to see a sign like that as demonic, a mark of the unnatural. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if it's not a symbol of evil, but a genetic marker? The title of this documentary isn't just about Lilith. It's about the beings before Eve. If this entity was real, did she have children? Did her power and her physical traits pass down through a hidden bloodline, a lineage that was hunted and suppressed just as violently as her story was? This reframes everything. Those branded mummies, were they just believers or were they family? It forces us to look at Elspeth Mullin in a terrifying new light. Was she a descendant? A dormant carrier of this ancient cosmic DNA? And if so, what truly happened in that locked room? Was her death an execution, the final act of an ancient order still dedicated to wiping out her bloodline? Or was it something infinitely more horrifying? Was it a terrifying transformation? A spontaneous, violent activation of a power she never knew she possessed? The white hair, the impossible heat, the sound that cracked the air, were those her last moments or her first? It makes the horror personal. Can you imagine the terror of discovering you are part of a history that has been systematically erased with extreme prejudice? Of realizing a monster from mythology might be sleeping in your own blood? In the end, is this a story about a cosmic entity, a hidden bloodline, a monster from the dawn of time? Yes, but it's also about something far more human and far more dangerous. The name Lilith is just a label, a word they gave to a power that refused to be controlled. Her true crime was never disobedience. It was independence. This has never been about good versus evil. It has always been about power. The raw, brutal power to write the official story, to control the narrative, and to erase anything or anyone that contradicts it. This is the ultimate abuse. The authority to decide who is a person and who is a monster, who is remembered and who is erased. They didn't just hunt the people. They burned the records, scraped the texts, and rewrote the translations. They committed the perfect crime over and over for millennia. We have shown you what happens when a single thread of that erased history is pulled. We've uncovered the documents, the forensics, the testimonies that survived the purge, but it proves that for every story we can recover, thousands more may be lost forever. The only question left is, what else have they buried?